We need to find a way to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, if we're going to save America.
This is Paige. Welcome to the Necessary Trouble Show. Here's your host, my dad, Russell Fugett.
Thanks, Paige, and welcome back to the Necessary Trouble Show here at the Good Word Digital Studios. We're broadening out here a little bit and really excited to have a very important and timely conversation about what's going on in Nigeria and the SARS movement. I'm so grateful to have Irene Ojo-Felix, who's another friend, another George Washington University colonial in this space. She is the features editor at models.com and is also the casting director. And she is also the founder of her new company, Sola Casting. Irene, thanks for being our guest. Also, of course, a Nigerian American. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So again, we know, let's center. You're not an expert. You're not claiming to be, but I know you. I've known you for so long, and I know you have a very thoughtful and valuable perspective that'll be informative to me and our guests. And so you're here today. Just tell us about the history of SARS and the End SARS movement.
Absolutely. So SARS is a special police force unit that was, first made in, I think, the mid 90s, later 90s, that was supposed to help curb robbery specifically within Nigeria. During that time, there was a lot of transition politically. We've only ever had 3 presidents. Nigeria is a very young country. We got our independence in 1960s. And so the SARS unit was supposed to be used to help alleviate a little bit of the stress of the military, the soldiers, the police unit, just consider it like its own special task force. The issue with SARS and the issue with, just in general, a lot of things in Nigeria is that it's underfunded. And the police officers that are there weren't getting the necessary support financially to be able to even consider their careers as something that they can have like as a livelihood, and went towards what is unfortunately something that is very, comes easy to a lot of Nigerians as far as like an option out, which is corruption. And so the SARS unit has been something that has now evolved into its own beast, where for any reason at all, they can pull you over. They can, say, hey, you did something wrong. Come to our unit, sit down here. For something like very minor infraction, something as, maybe you did something wrong driving, or, your taillight is out. And imagine like the police officer can just like take you to their, their district, sit you there, and now make you pay if you don't want the convenience. And so it's, on a good day, it's just they ask for money. On a bad day, if it's someone that's super, super corrupt, they see you driving a nice car, they'll, arrest you, take you to their unit, and, tell you to pay a bribe that might be equivalent to like maybe like $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. They will empty your bank account. Sometimes the police officers have been, will accompany you to your bank, and they'll tell you, hey, here's your ATM, take out the money and empty the account, and we won't take anything. They'll look at your statement, they'll ask for the receipt. They won't accept anything outside of zero. And so a lot of youth, rightfully so, stood up against it. And again, that's at the best of the situation, they just take your money. There have been deaths, there have been missing persons cases, there have been people who have disappeared, so to speak. And I think with all of that has been happening around in the world, with COVID, with the looming financial crisis that will internationally sweep through us, a lot of people were just sick and tired of being abused. And there was a case that happened over the summer where, someone was killed because they just never brought forth the money. And their family couldn't, by the time the family could finally, one, see that the person was missing, two, find the person had been disappeared. And that was what
Hmm.
kind of, encouraged the protests. So yes, I think a lot of the corruption is just coming from, one, the larger problem of being underfunded, two, just general corruption that has seeped into not only the SARS unit, but is a greater reflection of the government itself. Because, they're getting their dictation, they're getting what they're supposed to do and their protocol from a larger government that has, essentially wiped out dissent from its citizens and, greenlit one of the most atrocious, human rights violations that I've ever witnessed. And I'm sad to say happened to people who, I consider, my family, and it's been a very, very hard October. If you think about the fact that, our Independence Day was October 1st. And I think a lot of Nigerians
Wow.
came into the country, came into that month with so much, inspiration and hope for the future of the country. But, Nigerians are also realists. And I think we recognize the issues that have been plaguing our country for a very long time. And what you're kind of seeing in the past 2 to 3 weeks is a result of the blinders being taken off, essentially.
So just a quick follow-up to that. Now that it says SARS has been, I guess, disbanded, like what's the mood on the ground and what's kind of the near term or maybe even the long-term future look like?
I mean, disbanded. The word is just so funny to say because Nigeria also, we're tricksters, especially the government. This has not been the first time that people have risen up against SARS. I think, it's been over 13 years of issues and the first person that, came forward. But, it's been disbanded, but it's also just what it really essentially has been renamed, what people have specifically said. You say you want to disband something, make sure that the police officers in question that have bad records are no longer employed. What's to happen to the people whose family members have died or have, lost money? Is there any are we going to be compensated for these losses? What's going to happen? If there's no money for SARS, what money will be there for the next iteration? I think it's not really addressing the issues. The Nigerian government is trying to push forward a social media ban, because if you look at the power of Instagram and Twitter during all of this organizing, I mean, it was essential. It was one of the things that connected people so much. And was able to kind of get the word out. I mean, I was looking at what was happening on 10/20/20, which is the day of the Lekki tollgate massacre. I was looking at that live. That was on Instagram Live, that a lot of that was being projected out there. And so what you saw was Instagram and social media in general being an added contributor, not only to help people organize, but also help people to raise money. And the money was used to, feed the protesters that were on the ground, make sure that we can pay for bail, make sure we can provide people with water, provide people with, escape routes. I mean, to see the organizing on that level of what was needed happen in a country like Nigeria was really inspiring to me, just to say that I think a lot of people saw and took inspiration to what was happening in America during this summer and recognize that we can kind of do it in our own way. And no, I mean, like, the government with the social media ban is extremely dangerous. What I will even say even furthermore is the targeting of forward-facing activists that when they want to travel, now all of a sudden their passports get seized. I mean, we're really on the brink of what is, full-face just fascism and something that is threatening American democracy, but is also bleeding into these subsidiary countries that you might not even think of. And, when Nigerian government is using words like oh, fake news, and
Right. Right.
it's really mind-boggling to see. But there's been the past 2 weeks have been kind of like a bringing down of the fire, so to speak, but it's still there. And Nigerians, I think in general, the youth cult are just kind of trying to figure out what can we do since our government can enact violence against us. We can't even peacefully protest. There's no First Amendment right, like how it is here. And you
Right.
really see that people's rights can be not only taken advantage of, but dissipated in total.
Well, we don't want to see fascist approaches to governing be the only export or the most recent export that we have here from America. How can those of us here in the States, stand in solidarity? It was so beautiful to see after George Floyd that there were protests and calls to reform police and so many movements that went worldwide this summer. How can we return the favor here in the States and stand in solidarity with the people there who are organizing?
Nigeria needs pressure. I think even the small, petty responses that we got from our government during all of this crisis was because international people were looking at them and saying, hey, are you guys gonna address what's going on? Because we have deals with you in oil, and we have deals with you in all of your exports. And it doesn't really look good if, there's blood attached to these, dealings. And in the past,
blood on the flag, right? I thought that's the image that's in my mind, is the blood on the flag.
Exactly. And I think that what Nigeria needs the most is international support and pressure. It's been kind of hard right now because obviously the president-elect is not going to come in until January. And, Joe Biden did have, a statement to say that he condemns what happened, along with a lot of international dignitaries. But what really comes down to it is, can you put a sanction on high-ranking state officials so that they can't travel and they can't escape to London or to America? Because London and America is normally the refuge of when things get kind of gritty. Nigerians, especially our leaders, all of a sudden are just in Europe and you never hear about them. But who offers that type of sanction? Who allows that? In the 90s, when, Nigerians, this is not the first time, it's been a very bloody history. But in the past, immediate sanctions were put on from all of our support figures that show that, no, you can't just do this, and you can't just commit human rights violations with no consequences. And that led for pressure for Nigeria to first even become a democratic state in the first place. A lot of people don't know, when we got colonized, or when we became independent in 1960, we entered essentially what was a military state. And it wasn't for at least 2 terms that we finally were able to first vote on our first president. We've only had 3 presidential elections. So,
Wow.
Democracy and true freedom doesn't come without support, and support from global support, to even recognize that what these people are complaining about is an issue. And so whatever I would say is, for anyone who's in America that is, inspired by, the protesters and from the people who have really been rising up, to continue to put pressure on your, even from a local scale, whoever is your senator, whoever, continue to raise the cause. Social media has been a blessing, truly a blessing. And I think that the continuation of information is essential, and correct information as well. I will say that, there's so many activists that have been essential to making sure that the right information goes out there. So I would say, continue to find out the information yourself and support the leaders who have really been helping organize. For me, I just feel like a lot of people have kind of gone low, because again, anyone who is being highlighted as a protester or someone who's been organizing, life is getting really hard for them. Their bank accounts are now being threatened to be blocked. They cannot travel out of Nigeria and, let's say, find, asylum in a neighboring African country. DJ Swift, who I'm not sure if anybody really knows about who DJ Swift is, but DJ Swift was someone who was a key proponent for getting the information out there. Was one of the people who was on Instagram Live and kind of showing what was going on the ground. And the government has denied. I mean, it's also the issue of how can you really negotiate with a government that doesn't really even acknowledge that they sent the soldiers to kill you in the first place. DJ Swift has now had to, was just part of organizing, didn't raise up arms against anyone, just used her voice. But as a woman, not only as a woman in Nigeria, but as a forward-facing figure, she now has had to find asylum in Canada. Was almost killed. Someone had to shield her. I mean, it's stories that are coming out of there have been really, really stressful and traumatic. And you can only imagine how it is from, me personally being in America and going through this and feeling so helpless in a sense. So, people have, find out about the stories and, do exactly what we were doing almost 2-3 weeks ago. I know it's been in hand apart from the media as well. But, now that the election is through, it couldn't have happened at the worst time. And I anticipated that the world and America's attention span would be somewhere different. So hopefully now that, I know there's a little bit still that we're trying to shuffle through, but international scope is very essential and Americans just need to be aware of what's going on.
Well, Irene, thank you for sharing so thoughtfully in this space. And I hope that what you're contributing here on the Necessary Trouble Show will be elevated and shared to keep the conversation going and bring more awareness so we can all keep the pressure on and maintain hope and encouragement that Nigeria can have a better future than what we've just seen. So,
Absolutely.
Irene, thank you for being a guest today on our show.
Thank you for having me, Russell. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching The Necessary Trouble Show. Please visit necessarytroubleshow.com to support the show and to learn more. Subscribe to our e-newsletter and podcast, and follow us on social media at Necessary Trouble Show.
Good job, Daddy. This is Paige. Thanks for watching.